when I'm not being a photographer, a designer, a dad, or a supermodel, I am planning and executing a design and product conference that happens twice a year here in Utah. As one of the founders of this conference, it's a lot of work. But every time we have a conference, I try my best to divvy out and kind of delegate the responsibility as much as possible of running it and keeping everything afloat so that I can focus on the aspects of the conference I enjoy most, which is the videography and the photography, the documenting of the conference. And since I really just don't have time to be an event videographer outside of all the other things I try to do, this has been a really great opportunity for me to learn a little bit of that trade. As you can imagine, trying to run a conference, but also being the videographer for the conference, it's not super easy for me to have a large kit. I have to pack extremely light so that I can have everything with me and also do a bunch of other stuff at the same time. There's a lot of multitasking. I'm not saying it's the best idea in the world, but it's one of those things that's hard for me to let go of and to delegate, because it really is the aspect of running the conference that I really, really enjoy the most. And so I'm just not willing to part with it. But what that means is the kit that I use has to be light and it has to be simple. So for this last conference, like most of our conferences, I ran with the most bare essentials. And this time I decided to run with just 2 lenses and 1 body for videography. And this is what I chose to run with this time. I took my trusty, faithful GH5 and just 2 lenses this time. The Rokinon 12mm T2.2 and the Rokinon 85mm. The reason I chose just these 2 focal lengths is that I had a very specific vision for how I wanted the look of the video to be, and that was tight shots followed by some kind of wider sweeping shots, specifically following the music that you'll hear in the video when I share it with you. I chose the music before the event and kind of knew in my head what I wanted the shots to look like. Extremely long telephoto, tight shots, and a lot of them just really fast, just kind of punching you and beating over the head everything this conference has to offer, followed by pauses with kind of wider shots to give you a little bit more of the, the atmosphere. And so, and I guess a break from the short little shots. So that's why I chose a super wide lens and a super narrow lens. Other than that, all I had with me was a monopod, a tripod, and a dual setup with the SERP Genie Minis that allowed me to get some nice motion time lapse. But that was it, that was my kit. But the point of this video is really to focus on these 2 lenses and to talk about how they did, particularly in this event, but in general, how would these do for professional videography potentially. These lenses are about as cheap as you get for videography as far as cine lenses. Part of the thing I was wondering is, are these adequate? Should I have rented higher end lenses, or could you look at these as professional filmmakers and say, yeah, these will do an adequate job? But before I reveal my hand and tell you what I think, I'd really love for you to draw your own conclusions. So I'll show you the video that I just finished editing last week, kind of the highlight reel of this event. And then afterwards, I'll share with you my own thoughts, kind of the boring stuff, what I think of these lenses, and whether I think that they would potentially work well for professional videographers.
First of all, let me say just thanks for having me. It's an amazing setting here. We've got beautiful Park City, Utah behind us, the Olympic Village, some skiers out there.
hopefully you enjoyed that. That video represents a massive amount of work, not just for the video side, but just planning and running and executing a conference in general. It's a lot of work, but it's also very, very rewarding, and I love being a part of it. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about these two lenses. You'll notice that I actually only have one here with me, and there's a very good reason for that, and that is that I sold the 85mm, which should reveal to you a little bit of how I feel about it. But before I talk about the 85, I want to talk about the 12mm. I haven't talked about this lens at all really on the vlog, but if you've been watching my YouTube videos for a while, you might appreciate the fact that this has been my primary vlogging lens. This has been my lens of choice for about 6 months now. It's the only lens that I've used pretty much for most of my vlogging. It's the perfect focal length for me. I love the 24mm focal length because I can film myself pretty easily with it, but also I just love that focal length for, you know, filming other things as well. It's kind of my default. It's what I gravitate towards. And this lens, while it's not like a Fuji or a Canon Premiere glass, it's pretty good. In fact, I compared the photography version of this lens with a friend of mine. We compared it to the 16mm 1.4 Fuji lens, as a lot of people were asking for that. So that's a video I did a while ago. And in that video, my conclusions were that the 12mm Rokinon lens doesn't compete necessarily. Like, it's not better, certainly, and it's not the same level. But having said that, like, it's impressive and it's a great lens. One that I wouldn't hesitate recommending to someone for any sort of pro work. And that's how I felt about it. I feel like it's plenty sharp. I feel like the contrasting colors are nice. There's a little bit more yellow to it than there is with some of the other Fuji glass. I can't speak for Panalika because I've come to love this lens so much that I actually sold all my Panalika lenses. This is pretty much the only lens that I run with. Right now, it's the only lens that I own for the GH5, which it's actually a little tenuous, and I need to get some other lenses. It's affordable and it's a great entry point into cine lenses. So with all that in mind, you would think that maybe the 85mm would also follow suit, that would be an excellent lens to rely on, but it unfortunately was not. If you looked closely at that footage, you probably noticed that there was a lot less contrast. Even after post-production, where for a lot of the shots I did bump the contrast, it was still kind of washed out. The colors are just real muted. There's not a lot of punch, not a lot of contrast, and I was really disappointed with the image quality of that lens. It's a little soft. I don't mind a little bit of softness in video, as opposed to the stills photography that I do, but I just can't get past that lack of contrast and those kind of muted tones. It was just super difficult to work with when I've got these pretty good punchy shots from that 12mm lens side by side with these other shots that they don't look the same, they don't match. It's my bad for not experimenting a little bit more prior to getting the lens and prior to being in that event. I sort of just purchased it and ran with it. Now maybe this lens would work better on a full frame camera, maybe, which is what it was designed for. Maybe it will serve those sensors better. But I'm guessing that even then it's probably not great, and you'd probably be better off with something a little bit more expensive, or even some older used glass, or even vintage glass for a similar price. You'll probably find better quality out there. So does this lens work for pro work? For me, it's a no. About the best thing I can say about it is that it has a cool red ring, and I like red rings on lenses, but other than that, well, that's it. That's all I've got for you at this time. I hope you found something here that was valuable, educational, inspirational, entertaining, or something, or at very least that I was able to engage your mind for at least a few minutes. And until next time, I'll talk to you again real soon.